Have you noticed what soccer players do when they've just scored a goal? They throw a spear. They rush around like that.
That's good. This is a dangerous topic to open, but I would say during the last presidential election, we had a cynical fella who began to intone some of the same ideas that lead people to some sort of nationalistic fervor. And to the extent that that program that is looking for the moment in history at which this is the correct way to behave, that those detectors might have been up and waiting for somebody to use that kind of rhetoric, that we may find ourselves dragged into something we could anticipate but won't if we don't confront it, and that it is much better to understand, for example, that when you move from a phase where you have growth or something that seems like growth, that makes people feel comfortable, makes them keep their head down, makes them treat their neighbors basically all right, when that breaks down, at the point that you run out of growth, the natural impulse is to become tribal and go after those who aren't so closely related to you. And so to the extent that we can be taken advantage of by a leader who would cynically or otherwise lead us into some sort of tribal warfare, we need to recognize that danger and say, actually, is there a way out of here that is novel? Can we do something that isn't evolutionary, but actually matches the values that we believe ourselves to hold, the values that are defensible?
I think that's right. I think that it is important to recognize things like tribalism. I think that's probably a real phenomenon which is important and which can be and is played upon by demagogues. And so yes, tribalism, and there are some other things like that which are important. And when I say that they're distanced from the biological, or some of them are more distanced than others, and some of them are pretty naked, are pretty close to the surface. And I think that that the tribalism which is invoked both in the case of the Hutus and the Tutsis and in the case of the recent election disaster, that probably is sufficiently close to the surface that it's not unreasonable to use biological terminology and make and notice resemblances to, say, the battles between New Guinea Highland tribes, that kind of thing.
Good. Well, I guess then that suggests that there is something that I don't think I've seen, which is there a program in which people are seeking what are the legitimate boundaries of discussion for Darwinian selection, and when do we move into phenomena that are not amenable or don't benefit from that kind of perspective? So I think I hear you and me converging on the idea that this is dangerous territory. It is quite possible to extend it too far, but that there may be great value if we wish to avoid the worst instincts that human beings have in understanding what their Darwinian underpinnings are and how we might, in the same manner that you invoke birth control, family planning is, I think we both agree, contrary to fitness in many cases. How can we take that model where we have stepped away from a biological imperative to increase fitness at all costs, and we've done something more reasonable, family planning? How can we apply that same kind of logic to things like warfare and genocide and demagoguery?
It is a useful model because contraception is a case where we have stepped back from biology, and so it shows that we can do it.
Yes.
And yes, okay.
It does, but it also shows us this arbitrary nature of when you can, because the reason that we can do it with birth control is an accident of evolution, which is that sexual pleasure and sexual reproduction are not synonymous. We have been wired with a program that causes us to seek sexual pleasure in a way that results in reproduction, but because they aren't the same thing, they can be technologically decoupled, which makes family planning an almost trivial matter. You can engage in it without engaging in a fight with yourself.
Would you say tribalism is decoupled, has been decoupled in sports, football hooliganism, and
Yes, I would say this is a place actually where you see...
Loyalty to your team and
Yes.
yes.
Not necessarily productively, but that it is a case in which you see people's tribal impulses being applied to what is effectively one corporation battling another on a field. I mean, that's what they are. A corporation buys a bunch of players, another corporation buys one. It's not like two towns are fighting each other, but people get involved in it like it is. And so, yes, I think it's a place where it's been decoupled almost by accident.
Have you noticed what soccer players do when they've just scored a goal? They throw a spear. They rush around. They like that.
That's good.